you didn't get a run yesterday, which was a pity.
I didn't get to thank Victorians, which I was disappointed not to have an opportunity to do. So I'd like to add my thanks, because I think this isn't the finish line, but what a terrific milestone, and it's a credit to everyone in the state.
How great a relief was it to you when those tests came back yesterday?
Very great relief. I think the whole state sighed with relief. There was some tension in the 24 hours beforehand, so it was a real, it was a genuine roller coaster. So to have so much testing be done, especially in an area that we had specific concerns about, and for not just yesterday to be a donut day, but for today as well, double donut day is terrific. But as I say, it's a milestone. It's not the end. We've got hundreds of people who are still in quarantine as primary and secondary close contacts. So, there's another 10 or more days to play out for all of them, and there could well be some positive tests for those people who are in quarantine. But again, the thing about quarantine is that those are individuals who will be entirely contained. They won't put others at risk, and that's the principle, and we won't be concerned to see one or two cases if those individuals are doing the right thing.
So how optimistic are you about further days of zero?
Oh, it'll happen. We're on track. I said it the other day, we're absolutely doing the right thing, and the community response has been fantastic. That is exactly what will deliver more days of no cases. We have to expect additional cases. We have to be mindful of the fact that our biggest challenge now is complacency. Our biggest challenge now is the sense that there's nothing out there and we can do absolutely everything and we can see absolutely everyone without there being a risk. That is not the case, and it won't be the case for a while.
And just on the mystery cases, it looked like from the figures like you solved one of yesterday's 7 mystery cases when now it's 6, and I don't think it was one that was meant to drop off.
Yeah.
Do you have any details on that?
I don't know the specific case that dropped off, but we have an expert panel review every single day. We look through that list of mystery cases in the previous 7 days. Sometimes it's resolved because the genomics and new epidemiological information ties it to a known case. Sometimes the laboratory information tells us that it's probably not a real case. So something like that will be in play, but it's dropped off. There'll be another 3 that drop off just by virtue of falling out of the 14-day window tomorrow. So we're going to have 3 mystery cases, given that there's none today, for the 14-day period starting tomorrow.
We've got one more healthcare worker case, active healthcare worker case today than we did yesterday. Obviously, that's not something from the last 2 days.
No, it's not a new
what
case.
Happened there?
Look, it's just the linkage that you make by virtue of knowing that that's an active case at the moment who's identified as a healthcare worker.
Brett, are you confident that Northern Metropolitan outbreak is a full stop on that, or at least it's contained fully?
Yeah, absolutely. The response that Jerome talked about in terms of wrapping everything around those primary contacts and the secondary contacts is really robust. Great stabilisation in numbers, and again, it's not to say that there won't be cases that occur in some of those households, but they're doing the right thing and they're being checked on every day, so I'm very confident.
And can you talk us through the public health advice that you gave to the government about the in-home visits, and just talk to us about the risks, I guess, that have informed that decision, and what your message to Victorians is about that?
Look, it's really about those incremental small steps, and 2 people and from a single household is a recognition that that's really a small and manageable step, but a really important one for people. So many individuals have been wanting to see loved ones and close family. It's not an allowance for everyone across the state, across Metro Melbourne, because of that 25k rule, but it does allow for some in-home visits at that small level, and obviously the issue of dependence and being able to take those individuals with you is just a practical consideration.
Over the past few months, the health department, there's been a constant focus on improving systems, contact tracing, making sure it's as robust. What are some of the things that you're looking to improve over the next few weeks, or what's at the top of your mind that needs, tweaking or improving?
Look, I think the CRM rollout continues. There's lots of elements to that, including the reporting and analytic measures, but it's already got end-to-end processing. It's already got electronic laboratory reporting coming into that system, so it's doing the full job already. But there are some small enhancements that will keep being built in over time. I've been pretty frank about weaknesses or critiques in elements of our response right through. But I will say now, I think our case, contact and outbreak management is the best in Australia at the moment. Again, that's just a frank, might be biased, but it's an honest appraisal of the fact that we've had to step up with really significant requirements. So I think this setup we've got now could do things at scale if required, but even more importantly, at the very low numbers, it is best in country to be able to respond, not just in a timely way, but to do all of the things that are required to be able to go from time of testing to time of completion of first interview in around 24 hours is extraordinary. To go from time of testing, so this isn't time of notification, time of testing to time of contact of all close contacts in around 36 hours is also fantastic. It's exactly what has been spoken of by epidemiologists as reducing the risk of onward transmission by 80+%.
So do you think we're now in a position where we will never need to go into lockdown again?
I hope so. We can't control everything, and it absolutely depends on those individual behaviours, because things can still run away from you with all the best systems for response in the world. If no one turns up for testing, if no one isolates for days after becoming symptomatic, you can't chase that with contact tracing. If people are out and exposing dozens and dozens of others when they're infectious, then you can never get ahead of that kind of a wildfire.
The Health Department Associate Secretary Caroline Edwins, she told Senate estimates today that the COVID Safe app wasn't being used in Victoria at the height of the pandemic. Can you go into a bit more detail around that?
I think there was a couple of week period where we had to work through, as was a legal requirement, the privacy issues of separately cached data. Once that was worked through, it was absolutely being used.
Oh, sorry, you weren't using it. Okay, so you weren't using it because of the caching issues, as opposed to because you were too overwhelmed?
No, that was my understanding. That was an issue of working through the privacy considerations that we had to meet in order to meet the requirements of federal law in that respect.
Is it being used now at all?
It is. It's clearly people have it. We're still asking about it, and we would still do those downloads if it pings anyone who's a close contact.
Are there problems with it? I think the Premier suggested the other day that, it had said someone was on a different floor of the hospital to what they actually were. Are you confident that it's actually up to the job?
Oh, it's made Bluetooth connections for people across a wall. That's not a close contact for contact tracing purposes, but that Bluetooth connection can still happen within 1.5 metres. That isn't a problem so much. It'll identify someone who you end up realising wasn't a close contact, but it hasn't delivered as much as we would have liked. But as we've said all along, the settings that we've been in haven't allowed for a lot of close contacts. I'd still encourage people to have it on their phone, because as we go to pubs and clubs not clubs, but restaurants opening, and a lot of strangers being potentially within 1.5 metres, then you'd hope it comes into its own at that point.
Premier, you had an interesting expression on your face when I asked Brett about the COVID app. Do you have a view on it? Is it up to the
Everyone should
job?
download it.
Can I just ask you a question?
That is my
I've just got one more for
Oh,
Brett.
sorry.
Sorry, I know you've got to get to Parliament, Premier, but Brett, there's a new opinion poll that gives you a higher approval rating than the Premier. When you went to medical school, is there any expectation that might happen one day?
No.
Do you have any view on that?
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, everyone will have their critiques through all of this. Everyone will have their views on what's gone well and how things have been handled. I think I have been upfront about good decisions and bad decisions and everything in between. There's no question that everyone's done their utmost through this, and there's no questions that lessons have been learned through it all as well. But I'm not here for the applause and don't care much for being vilified, to be honest. I just want the numbers down, and I want Victoria to get on and lead a COVID normal life that we're all looking forward to.
How did you celebrate last night?
With a donut. Very fine donut.
As we get to the end of this period, this lockdown, we join a select group of
states and cities that have crushed the second wave, but others such as Hong Kong, Vietnam, haven't gone to the same extent and duration when it comes to lockdowns. In hindsight, was it as necessary to have duration and intensity of lockdown here?
Absolutely, absolutely. We had no choice. If we, the second waves that have occurred in South Korea, in some other places, have plateaued at dozens of cases. If we had plateaued at dozens of cases and not gotten to the point where we've gotten to today, then there's no opening with South Australia, no opening with New South Wales. The border communities can't have that connection with their neighbouring towns and their neighbouring regions that has been so important for their work and for their life. I think that's a really critical element about why we've driven it to the point that we've driven it to, and with the assurance that we don't need the same levels of control going into Christmas than we would have to have if we had 10 or 20 or 30 cases a day. If that were the case, we'd need levels of control that would limit ongoing the kind of numbers in pubs and in restaurants and in retail and in so many other settings. We can go to a consideration of a much more open way of life that I think is to everyone's advantage.
Sorry, if there was a second wave somewhere else in Australia, say New South Wales, would your advice be to close the border?
Oh, we would make considerations. Again, it's for First Ministers to make that call. On the advice of me, it would be, really about the levels that it's at, whether it's increasing or decreasing, where they're occurring, what control measures are in place. So there's no definitive answer on that. We, as Chief Health Officers across the country, we've always made those individual considerations based on the specific circumstances.
Premier.
Last question, please.
You guys know.